going live in 5. I meant 5 minutes, not 5 p.m. That's quite funny. Just make sure that I'm definitely on first, everybody, and we will crack on. Yep, I think we are live. Very good afternoon to everybody. It is Sunday, the 7th of July, and a very warm welcome to you from Mark Vogan Weather HQ here in Evanton, Rossshire, just north of Inverness. It is cloudy. The sun was shining a little while ago, and I think we managed to exceed 16 Celsius. Woohoo! Yeah, it's been pretty poor so far, hasn't it? So yes, very good afternoon to everybody, and a warm welcome to the 99th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. We have got a lot of things going on at the moment, whether it be hurricanes making a final approach on Texas, heatwave in the western United States. There's a lot of things going on across the pond, actually, now that I think about it. And we also have got other aspects to talk about globally as well. Some pretty darn cold conditions in parts of Tasmania and southeastern areas of Australia. And we may actually have a sudden stratospheric warming to talk about over Antarctica, not here in the northern hemisphere, obviously, but certainly down under across the southern hemisphere. We may have some very interesting things going on. So a very good afternoon to Lisa. Thanks for moderating this. I appreciate that. Good afternoon to Mark Kinnish. And at the moment, it looks as if that's the 4 folk that are on. I've got 13 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Very good afternoon to David Vogan down in Kirkintilloch. I think you enjoyed your birthday a few days ago. I think you went out for a bite to eat, if I'm correct in saying. Good afternoon to Paul James as well. Thanks for tuning in, Paul. I hope you're having a good afternoon so far, my friend. We've also got Sandazoo93. Hello from southern Sweden. Hope you're having a good afternoon where you are up in Scandinavia. What's the weather conditions like where you are? It's partly cloudy. The sun is trying to peek out. Like I said, it looks as if we did manage to touch 16 Celsius, and it's been pretty subdued. It's been pretty subdued so far. The warmth to speak about, that's for sure. So yeah, do me a favor, hit that like button, share with your friends and family, and you know the drill by now. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Having a little sip of my coffee. We've got LGX2 from Manchester tuning in. Hello to you. Hope you're having a good day so far. Yeah, Lisa says, I love Scandinavia. I would love to go to Scandinavia. I haven't been there yet. And that is certainly on the hit list going forward to pay a little visit up to either Norway, Sweden, or I know technically Finland's not part of Scandinavia, I believe. I made that mistake one time before and somebody corrected me with that. Denmark, part of Scandinavia, I think. So we'll just warm things up. We'll wait and see how many concurrent viewers we can build up to before we go into today's busy schedule of content globally. We'll touch on the UK, Ireland, and Europe pattern as well. Very good afternoon to 107th Galaxy. Hope you're well this afternoon. Something wrong here. Buffering the video. Yeah, I actually noticed that I'm having issues with the internet. Lindsay, could you do me a favour and check out if it's buffering on your end? Paul James says, been to Helsinki twice, but not Norway or Sweden. Got 12 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Quiet at the moment. Do me a favour, hit that like button. Let YouTube and myself know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. Lisa says yes, the buffering has cleared now. It actually appears on my phone to still be buffering, so I hope my internet's not going to drop off. It seems to have been recently. Actually, there's been. I think I'm away at night, but Lindsay had said that the internet was down for about an hour one night during the course of the week. Eh? No. Anybody else having issues with buffering at the moment? Can you let me know? Because certainly on our end, it looks as if there's a bit of a problem. So I hope this isn't going to be too much of an issue. Paul James is watching the F1 at Silverstone. 107th Galaxy says it's okay at their end. LGX2 says it's okay there as well. That's good. So we will continue to crack on. We've got a mere 11 concurrent viewers at the moment. Thanks very much for tuning in this afternoon. Do me a favour, hit that like button. It would be most helpful. So anyway, do you know what? See, rather than waffling on and trying to fill time here, I'm going to crack on with the content today. We've got the what is this? Miss Kahuna 23. Very good afternoon to you. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Let me know where you are. Let me know what your weather conditions are like wherever you're tuning in from this afternoon. Do you happen to be watching from the USA? Whereabouts are you experiencing heat in the western side of the United States? Also, the east, we've seen record-breaking conditions. I think Raleigh, North Carolina, recorded 106 degrees the other day, the hottest day on record, and it's quite unusual to see a cool pool in the central United States heat dome both on the west coast and the east coast as well. Some wet conditions, cool conditions in the upper Midwest, heat on both sides of the country, and then we've got Beryl at the moment doing its very best to try and reach hurricane status once again, but it is ingesting some dry air and also wind shear. It's not been dropping off as much as I thought. Lisa says her son's experienced 110 degrees. So yeah, pretty brutal stuff. Whereabouts is your son, Lisa? Good afternoon to Stevie M from Eaglesham. He's in Arizona. Aye, that would figure. That would figure. Paul Farwell, hello to you as well. Paul says, hello, Mark. Do you think any ex-hurricanes will affect our weather again this summer? Sunny and breezy in Swindon. Very big possibility, Paul, I must admit. Very much part of the summer forecast has been that the middle and second half of the summer season, not so much in the early stage of the season, but certainly the mid to second half in particular. I think August can quite often be heavily susceptible to influence from the tropics. And the reason why is when you're turning heat northwards away from the equator towards the pole, that obviously interacts with the jet stream. You're throwing warm tropical air northwards. That can have one of two different things. It can have an indirect effect that actually can produce a heat wave, and we've seen that in plenty of times going by, but it also can get caught up. The remnant low, once a warm core transitions into a cold core, becomes extra tropical, becomes a typical baroclinic area of low pressure. But then what happens is it's got that residual tropical energy associated with it, can engage with the jet stream, enhance, can re-deepen as an area of low pressure. I've actually seen areas of low pressure that have deepened as a baroclinic cold core low, deeper than what it was as a hurricane within the tropics. And then that can ride the jet all the way up into the UK and Ireland. I've got a funny video on YouTube actually. This was going back to 2011, September of 2011. ex-Hurricane Katia. That was actually the rename from Katrina. Obviously, Katrina was disregarded after its devastation that hit the Gulf Coast as a upper end Cat 2, Cat 3 when it made landfall, but it was a Category 5 at one point. That was obviously the name was taken away after that and retired. That's the word that I'm trying to look for. And the ex-Hurricane Katia in 2011 actually barreled across the UK, generated like 80-mile-per-hour winds. I was standing on the coast, on the Ayrshire coast, and uh, it's on YouTube. But if you actually type in Katia and like Mark Vogan or whatever, you'll get a pretty funny video because you couldn't even hear what I was saying hardly at all because of the noise of the wind. It was really was quite an impressive system, I must admit. So we've got 17 concurrent viewers at the moment. Hit that like button, please, and it certainly would be appreciated. Brighton, it's a mixed day here, says Miss Kahuna, 23 in Brighton, 16 Celsius and very windy. Yeah, quite a wet spell over the last 24, 36 hours across the south of the UK. That system then kind of developed. We had the dip in the jet. That jet stream was racing across the Atlantic. It affected Lisa. She was flying, I believe, from Dublin back to Inverness, and she had encountered quite strong winds within the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. I also had another report from Airbus Red on Twitter. He's a pilot, and he measured a wind speed of 178 miles per hour just to the east of Humberside, I believe, so out over the North Sea. That very straight west to east jet stream, very powerful for the month of July, I must admit. So quite interesting to hear some of these reports. We've got Richard Trott as well. Thanks very much, Richard, for tuning in, my friend. Hope you're having a good weekend. Hope you're not working too hard. So Richard says, hi, all listening in whilst watching the exciting F1 British Grand Prix with British drivers 1 to 2 after a rain-affected race, 9 laps left. Yeah, you're speaking foreign language to me. I'm I'm not very clued up on the F1. I know my stepson Mikey would probably be tuning in if he's not out in the golf course working. But yeah, everybody enjoying the F1. I'm sure there's plenty. Thanks very much, by the way, for tuning in. Given the fact that you're watching the F1, Richard, I do greatly appreciate that. So yeah, Lisa says, yeah, it was very uncomfortable. I actually quite like a little bit of turbulence, I must admit. Maybe not necessarily turbulence that makes your head bounce off the lockers above right enough. Not quite that extreme, but certainly I do quite like a little bit of bouncing around. So yeah, hello to Katrine. Very good afternoon to you, Katrine. Hope you're well this afternoon. What you up to? Obviously, you're watching me, but hope you're having a good weekend. It is mainly a rainy day with sporadic sunny spells, says Katrine. So we've got 21 concurrent viewers at the moment. Let's rattle on and let's get into today's content here. We'll look at the global picture in just a second, but let's first and foremost look at Tropical Storm Beryl. Now, this is the very latest from our friends at the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Doing an amazing job, as always, tracking every little movement within the tropics, keeping millions of people safe within the Atlantic basin and surrounding coastline here. But according to them, as of the 10 a.m. advisory, we have got a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. So, in fact, within the last hour, the maximum sustained winds have increased to 65 miles per hour. Minimum pressure down to 992 millibars, and it is moving at a slow 10 miles per hour in a northwesterly direction. So you can see here it's located within the far northwestern corner of the Gulf of Mexico, and it looks as if it is going to make a landfall within the next 24 hours, somewhere around the Matagorda Bay area of Texas. That's kind of just down the coast a little bit from Houston, Galveston. That was actually the first place that I visited in the United States back in July of 1998 in the midst of the heat wave. That was a pretty impressive heat wave, I must admit. At that stage, I was, 16 years of age. It was the first time I had experienced that kind of heat. and boy oh boy, it certainly was. Big cracks in the ground as well because of the dry conditions that they were experiencing at the time as well. So this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center in terms of the track. So you can see here it's going to make a beeline for the coast just below Galveston. We're probably going to experience some storm surge coming in off the Gulf, affecting Galveston Island, possibly running up the Houston Ship Canal as well. So that needs to get taken into consideration. And we're going to see a widespread several inches of rain as well from this system. Notice here it takes a bend to the right. The reason why is we've got a jet stream diving south down the plain states, heat dome in the east, heat dome in the west, and a cold pocket in the mid to upper levels in the central portion of the country at the moment here. And that is what's going to force Beryl. Once it makes a landfall, it's going to turn right, and hopefully it's going to bring some welcome rain to some parts of the United States. In fact, I didn't bring up the US drought monitor. I might actually try and do that because we're seeing an increase in drought, especially in the mid-Atlantic and parts of the interior southeast as well. We're seeing increase in dryness, and that may have an effect later down the road in terms of heat and temperatures. We've already seen all-time record temperatures being recorded during the past few days. So this is the latest IR imagery from Tropical Tidbits, and you can see here that it looks as if the center is right around here, so you can see where the cursor is, and it looks as if it's trying to ingest, and it is ingesting some dry air, so it's pulling dry air off the continent and wrapping into the center, and that is slowing down the re-strengthening, reorganization of Beryl. You can see here some of the convection disconnected between the center and the outer portion of the circulation here. That typically is a representation of dry air. And if you look at this here chart, you can see actually Beryl in the very top right hand corner of this graphic here, but you see that little bit of dry air getting ingested and wrapped into the circulation, and that is having a slight issue at the moment. So we're seeing that shear, but the dry air is what's suppressing its reorganization process, and that is a good thing because we obviously don't want to see a particularly strong and powerful system developing once again. Look at the models here indicating that it barely reaches Category 1 status before landfall in Texas during the overnight tonight and then tomorrow morning. Looks as if the majority of the models now actually keep it as a high-end tropical storm, if you notice. So this is the H-Wharf, and it shows Beryl moving onto the Texas coast as a 981 millibar weak Category 1 hurricane. Notice here that a lot of the convection is on the northern side of the center here. We've got the majority of the weather here, and always the right-hand side of a circulation, that's known as the dirty side, or the side with the heaviest wind, the heaviest rainfall, and the worst storm surge. It's always on that right-hand side of a center of hurricane core. So you can see here, this is off the GFS model, and there's that dry air. This is going back to 00Z this morning, and you notice here that we've got, similar to what we're seeing in the IR imagery actually, where you've got the moistest of air, the most humid air on the northern side of the circulation, and there's the dry air getting pulled out of southwest Texas, eastern Mexico, and wrapping around the southern side of the circulation here. But what kind of is trying to happen here is, if you notice that we start to see the moisture getting wrapped right around the center, and it kind of cuts off the supply of dry air into the center here, which is quite interesting. So this is obviously Beryl trying to reorganize, trying to kind of restructure its inner core, and I think it's going to have a last gasp attempt at rapid cyclogenesis here. So you notice here that we've cut off that ingestion of dry air seen by the GFS model here. It is now a little bit more tightly wound, a little bit more compact as it makes that landfall into the area between Corpus Christi and Galveston. Here is a 988 millibar area of low pressure here. That would probably be right on the border between tropical storm and hurricane status here. So conditions have been becoming more conducive for re-strengthening of Beryl, but it looks as if the dry air has been actually the bigger problem as opposed to wind shear. And you can see here these are the current sea surface temperatures within the northwest Gulf of Mexico. So we're right around 30 Celsius, and that's what 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So plenty warm, but obviously if you're ingesting dry air, if you've got any kind of wind shear as well, what you want is moisture, no wind shear. The system has a nice vertical structure to it. There's nothing blowing the thunderstorms away from the center. And typically, if you're over that 30 Celsius waters, then you would expect to see a rapid strengthening of the circulation here. So that's enough for Beryl. Let's have another look. We've got Jay tuning in. We've also got Gavin Partridge. Hello to you, Gavin. Hope you're well, my friend. Long time no speak. We'll maybe need to get a wee chat on the phone at some point. It would be good to catch up. How's the ankle? Let me know how you're doing and how the recovery is going on for you, my friend. So yeah, just see if we've got anybody else tuning in, and then we'll continue to move on. We're going to be talking about Australia next. It'd be quite good if there had been a couple of folks from down in Australia or New Zealand watching this, because we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail, because some very interesting cold potential down the road, especially when you factor in the possibility of a sudden stratospheric warming taking place. So when you get that, it's the same idea as within the Northern Hemisphere. SSW, you're increasing, not guaranteed, but you're increasing the chance of seeing cold outbreaks moving south away from the North Pole. Same idea, only it moves northwards away from Antarctica and the southern portions of Africa, South America, and Oceania have a greater chance of seeing some outbreaks of cold moving into these regions of the southern hemisphere when you get an SSW over Antarctica. So we're going to have a look at this in just a second here. But I don't think I've missed anybody. If I have, I do apologise for that. We've got 25 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Gavin says, "Hi Mark, yeah, been a while, hasn't it? Ankle is gradually getting better, but it's slow. I'm doing okay. So yeah, I'm glad you're doing okay, Gavin. And we've all been thinking about you at this time. So yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's continue to crack on. We've got Joyce as well in. Hi to you, Joyce. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday afternoon. Dodging the showers here, Mark. Sometimes windy, sometimes warm. We are both great here. Hope you are both well, says Mum. So yeah, thanks for tuning in this afternoon. I do greatly appreciate both of you checking out today's live. So anyway, let's crack on here. This is a few tweets here by Weather Zone, based in Australia. And first and foremost, I want to say that at the end of June, so this is going back a little while, but parts of central Queensland received over 100 millimeters of rain in the last 24 hours. So within a day, we've seen 4 inches of rainfall in parts of Queensland, with some towns picking up their best June rain in 8 years, which is quite interesting actually. So yeah, that was the rains in parts of Queensland and northeastern Australia. But the cold has been the big story. Now, it was expected that Melbourne would hit 0 Celsius, and they would expect the coldest weekend. So this is going back again to the end of June, coldest weekend in 4 years as polar air mass spreads over southeastern Australia. Didn't quite reach 0, I believe. And we also seen, as well as the chill, an approach on Australia's all-time mean sea level pressure record, which is a 1044 millibars. I actually was surprised at that. I actually thought they would have had a pressure higher than 1044 millibars, but no, that is the record. And there was a speculation that that record may have been achieved, a new one for atmospheric pressure, but I don't believe it has been. So we've seen some chilly conditions down in southeastern Australia, and particularly so the Tasmania area. So this is the tweet that I was talking about here. Melbourne is shivering through its first extremely cold morning of the week, with the potential to see one of its coldest weeks in 11 years. But like I say, I don't think they managed to quite achieve that. But the interesting one here, parts of mostly heavily populated southeast corner, I'm assuming, of Australia, shivered through a colder than average June, which won't be a surprise to many. But nationwide, June was 0.71 Celsius above the long-term average when you factor in the continent as a whole. Then we started to get into the interesting stuff here. A tiny town located in Tasmania's central plateau just recorded Australia's first -10 of the year. This was back on the 2nd of July, as southern Australia starts to feel the icy chill of an unusually strong mid-winter high-pressure system. And then we go on to see the chill becoming even more impressive. Several Adelaide suburbs dipped below freezing, while the central business district (CBD) dropped to 0.6 Celsius. So this is Adelaide, and it was actually Adelaide's coldest temperature in 18 years, which is quite interesting stuff. Meanwhile, one tiny speck of on the South Australia map registered its coldest night on record with -3.2 Celsius. So if you're tired of the heat, certainly folks in the UK and Ireland won't be tired of the heat. They're asking the question, when is summer going to arrive? It hasn't quite arrived yet. But we got a flirt with back a week or so ago, the end of June. We had 2 days above 30 Celsius, but that was confined to the southeast. So anyway, a weather station at Leeward just registered the lowest July temperature ever recorded, reliable temperature in Tasmania, as high pressure continues to build over the state. And amazing photograph here by a photographer. This is an article here, and you can see Tasmania's second coldest night on record. So that's pretty impressive stuff. Look at that photograph, amazing. Temperatures down to -13.5 Celsius. So Jill Dayton took that photograph of the icy trees in parts of interior Tasmania. And then we're also seeing temperatures for a third consecutive night. First time on record in Tasmania, a third consecutive night below -12 Celsius. So very, very impressive chill here. Let's continue to look forward here. Tom Saunders, meteorologist in Australia, Sydney continues to pull away from the field. After showers tomorrow, we could even reach the annual average precipitation in Sydney at 1,222 millimeters of rain. That's pretty impressive given the fact that we're only in the 6th month. We're halfway through the year, and Sydney's seen an entire year's worth of heavy rainfall. So pretty interesting stuff. And let me just continue to look through here and see. But we are going to continue monitoring the southern hemisphere because it looks as if we have an SSW potential anyway. So this is the 10 HPA temperatures over Antarctica, not over the northern hemisphere. I want to emphasize that one, but the southern hemisphere. So obviously we're looking at all things global. And right here on Mark Vogan Weather on YouTube, that is the goal here, to look at all aspects in terms of world extremes. And rather than talking all about the heat records that quite often is the case at this time of the year in the north, we're going to be talking more about the cold down under. But you can see here that this is the cold over Antarctica at the moment at 10 HPA. So this is the upper levels of the stratosphere, obviously. But you can see here that if we skip out to 10 days from now and we'll look at the 10 millibar level, you can see the strong warming trying to push towards the South Pole here. And what effect does that have? Well, it has the same effect as what we have here in the northern hemisphere. We have greater chance of seeing the release of Arctic air southwards. We're essentially turning it on its head, and we're seeing an Antarctic air that's pushing northwards, so towards the southern hemisphere, land areas, parts of South America, Africa, and Australasia. We have an increased chance of seeing cold air pushing northwards towards these continents here. And you can see here, if we look at the upcoming 5 days of the GFS model, Australia doesn't look as if it's going to experience much in the way of cold, but obviously it takes a little while for this to propagate away from the pole towards the equator here. But you can see very cold conditions over southern portions of South America here, edging even in towards the Rio de Janeiro area. We're still got warmer than average, but the cold is pushing into southern portions of Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. We're seeing some fairly cold conditions, and then as we continue to play through this loop, you can see here how Australia starts to turn colder. We lose the grip of cold over South America, if you notice here, but it turns colder in parts of Australia as we progress towards the period between the 18th and the 23rd of July here. So we'll watch and see what happens over the next week or so with regards to this. Does it materialize? Do we see the warming propagate from stratosphere into the troposphere? Same type of story that we talk about in the winter time up here over the northern hemisphere. But look at the UK and Ireland here. We're going to continue to see below average conditions here. Look at the central United States. Very cool compared to average for the middle portions of July here. Warm in the east and also very warm in the west as well, up into western portions of Canada. Alaska is below average here. Most of Eurasia is warmer than average. Most of Africa warmer than average. And most of Australia is warmer than average as well here. Katrine says that my cousin lives in Melbourne. So, very interesting stuff. I must say, I would quite like to see. My wife and I back in 2022 visited Perth just for a couple of nights. We were actually on holiday in Bali, and I happened to book a little side trip to Australia to Perth. But I would quite like to see some of the big cities in the east of Australia. I would also quite like to see Ayers Rock in the centre of the country. That would be pretty cool to see. Has anybody else been there? I would be curious to know. Jim Bob is present this afternoon. Thanks, Jim Bob, for tuning in. I do greatly appreciate that. Hope you're well this afternoon and enjoying your afternoon. So let's continue to see what is taking place. So this is the upcoming 5 days across the planet, remaining below average in Western Europe here, which is not good news if you're looking for some heat. Where we are seeing some heat at the moment is in the west and the east of the United States here. This is a pretty impressive record to fall. Palm Springs, California. The old record was 123 degrees. That was set, well, it was tied last back in June 2021, but it was broken, that record, long-standing record of 123 degrees back a few days ago, where we had 124 degrees Fahrenheit recorded. Meanwhile, Raleigh in North Carolina recorded 106 with a heat index of 118. So brutal conditions you don't often see on the same day. A heat record, an all-time heat record being achieved in the East Coast, and essentially a heat record being achieved in the West Coast. Obviously, you've got that deep trough in the central portion of the lower 48, which is driving this heat over the east and the west. So that's a tweet there by Jeff Berardelli. And let's see what else we can look at here. So Colin McCarthy talking about that 124 or 51.1 Celsius heat record in Palm Springs. So yeah, and we are with Redding in California, also up in the northern portion of the Central Valley, recorded an all-time record of 119 degrees Fahrenheit. So these are the excessive heat watches and warnings present over California and the interior west of the United States at the moment here. So let me see. This is the geopotential height and normalized anomaly here. So this is how this pattern is going on at the moment here. We've got this deep trough at the moment delivering on unusually cool air for the time of the year, by the way, all the way from the central prairies of Canada to the Gulf Coast. There's Beryl now starting to make an approach. But you can see here this heat dome. We've got a near 560, 594 essentially closed contours here encompassing the entire state of California at the moment. So we've got a very significant depth of sinking over the western portion of the United States at the moment, generating these remarkable temperatures at the moment here. So like I say, all the way up in Northern California and the central north of California, we had an all-time record of 119 set in Redding in the far north of the Central Valley. We also had the heat record in North Carolina in recent days. So this is the setup at the moment here over North America. These, by the way, are the GFS 2-meter temperature anomalies expected, or not anomalies, actually air temperature at 2 meters projected by the model here. So this is for today. We've got 116 in the Redding area once again, and we have also got temperatures as high as the low 120s in the San Joaquin Valley. So that's to the south of Sacramento here, and then obviously a little bit fresher conditions if you're in the high Sierra Nevada at the moment here. I bet you Lake Tahoe would be a lovely place to be at the moment here. Probably temperatures only in the mid 80s, and you've got some beautiful conditions, beautiful scenery as well around the Lake Tahoe area. But I'm sure folks within the Central Valley will be escaping to the mountains to get some fresher air at the moment here. Temperatures in southern Nevada as well, around the Las Vegas area. The record is 117 degrees. That's been tied a few times. And look at this here. This is the forecast by AccuWeather. And pretty astonishing, 119 degrees. So that blows the old record away if this forecast proves correct. Look at Wednesday, 120 degrees in Las Vegas. That's crazy stuff, isn't it? It looks as if we have got 118 forecasted by the Weather Channel. So these are graphics for maximum temperatures over the United States. We've got the mid 90s in the DC area, the capital. We've got 91 in New York, 89, not too bad up in Boston, and even fresher, thundery 81 in Caribou, Maine. Near average in Atlanta, 90 degrees. But then you notice here, Phoenix 115, LA with a little bit of an onshore breeze off the Pacific Ocean. We've got 85 degrees. Beautiful conditions in San Francisco. We've got an onshore breeze blowing through the Golden Gate and allowing the temperature to be a very, very pleasant 69 degrees. Up in Reno, 101, and there's Medford, Oregon at 109 degrees. I think it was 115 was achieved, and not that far from the Pacific Coast in Oregon a few days ago as well. But Death Valley is expected to approach their all-time record. Now, there's a bit of dispute. It's been long regarded as 134 degrees set back in something like 1913, but looks as if the highest reliable temperature is 130 degrees, and that was recorded a few years ago in Death Valley. But the AccuWeather's expecting 129 degrees today, and that is obviously only 1 degree off the highest reliable temperature recorded on Earth, not just Death Valley, but actually the highest recorded on the planet here. 128 on Monday, 129 again approached on Tuesday, and then we're kind of hovering around 126, 127 through the rest of the upcoming work week. So we'll watch and see how hot the conditions get. If we go back to the GFS 2-meter temperatures forecast here, you can see that as we skip right the way through the course of the week, Central Valley continues to see temperatures into the 105, 110 and above. We've got the temperatures down in southeastern California here, the Mojave Desert, the Colorado Desert, expecting to see temperatures day after day to the east of the coastal range in excess of 120 degrees. So very, very intense deadly heat to speak about. Temperatures, by the way, at night time not dropping below 100 in Death Valley. It was actually 128, I believe, yesterday in Death Valley. So yeah, it's pretty close to that 130. So we'll wait and see how things go over the next little while. This is an interesting tweet here. I'm kind of jumping a little bit here. This is an interesting tweet going back to June in France. It was actually 0.03 Celsius below average. And this was the first month that wasn't above average in France in 28 consecutive warmer than average. So this ends the run of 28 consecutive months warmer than average in France back in June. So that's pretty incredible, actually, when you think about it. It's been a few years since I've actually had slightly below average over the country of France. Obviously, the UK and Ireland both had a below average June, and that ended the first the run of above average for 2024 so far. This is an interesting one here by Maximiliano Herrera. Extreme temperatures around the world. Antarctica currently at its second lowest sea ice on record behind 2023, but the Arctic not doing too bad. Currently 12th lowest on record. So that's quite interesting to note. Let's see here. We've got the back on the 4th of July, Iran 1,000 meters above sea level, and there was a temperature recorded of 52.8 Celsius at Bashahara. So there you go, 927 meters above sea level. It was 50.8 Celsius. And again, nights no lower than the mid 30s, even close to 40 Celsius. This is also an interesting one, by the way. June up in Iceland, no surprise, because we did see blizzard conditions at one point during the early portion of June 2024. But it was especially cold in northern portions of Iceland, ranging between 0.2, minus 0.2, and minus 2.7 below average. This is the world's most below average country in June. So I thought that was quite notable, actually. So let's have a look and see, have I got anything else interesting to show you before we look at the global anomalies. An interesting one here. This is Willie Mossop on Twitter talking about the central England temperature. This is the first 4 days of July. Maximum anomalies was actually minus 2.93. So this is 2.93 below average for the first 4 days of July for the central England region here. This makes it the coldest first 4 days of July since 2002. And I remember actually July 2002, I was in New York that month, but it was very, very wet, if I can remember, back here in the UK. You got a fear of flying by any chance? We're talking about the turbulence at the beginning of the live stream. This is an interesting tweet here by Plain Sanity showing turbulence over Argentina. So I'm sure Lisa will be pleased to see this, given what she experienced in her flight back to Dublin. Oh! That certainly looks like pretty severe turbulence, if you ask me. I happened to come across that, and I thought I would show you that, because whether you love flying or not, I thought yeah, that would be pretty extreme stuff. So yeah, let's have a check. Is there anything else of note here to look at? Not particularly. So let's finish off by looking at the temperature anomalies for the last 45 days. So again, we're talking about a search for summer here in Western Europe. This is the last 45 days. So that takes us in to the period between the end of May and now. And this is the temperature anomalies over the continent. So the UK and Ireland is firmly below average for the last 45-day period here. And remember, we've got another below average week coming up. Looks as if we're going to gradually start to warm things up towards the middle portion of the month here. But yeah, this is the last 45 days. You could draw a line right down the center of Europe, To the west of that line, we're average to below average. Look at France. So we're talking about the first below average month ever so slightly in 28 months. Look at the low countries, Germany, where it's been very, very thundery, heavy rainfall. We've seen the Euros, we've seen the footage of matches being well, not abandoned, but they stopped for a period of time because of dangerous lightning, hail. So Germany's actually had a fairly average past 45 days, but then get east of that into Poland, into Slovakia, Czech Republic, all the other countries in the east, warmer than average. Even Iberia, it's not been a particularly warm start to summer 2024. We've got average just marginally above in some parts. Let's look at the from a world point of view for the last 45 days. Good part of Canada is below average, but yet the lower 48 away from the north, we've had a jet stream, quite a strong jet at that, crossing over the top, riding the border between Canada and the United States. South of that, we've seen above average. North of that, we've seen below average. A 50-50 split over Greenland, if you notice here. UK, we've talked about. Morocco has actually been slightly below average over the last 45 days. Much of South America to the north of Argentina has been warmer than average. Most of Australia, with the exceptions of New South Wales and Victoria, we've got slightly average to below average conditions here. Tasmania, we've got warmer than average across New Zealand. Most of Africa is warmer than average, if you notice. Southern portions of India, we've got slightly below average here. We've obviously seen the progression all the way up into the northern reaches of India, so the monsoon slightly ahead of schedule. Still wet anomaly across southwestern China. Most of Kazakhstan average to below average, with the exception to the far west. And then obviously we've discussed Europe also. We've had quite a lot of cool across parts of northern Russia. Also far eastern Russia and the far northeast of China as well has been below average. Japan, warmer than average. We've seen the first 40 Celsius of the year in parts of Japan. Record-breaking warm nights as well. Temperatures no lower than upper 20s to around 30 Celsius by nighttime. We've seen some horrendous heat again in Tokyo. Parts of Honshu Island has seen all-time records, or at least monthly records, fallen in parts of this part of the world in recent times. So let's look at July. We've essentially completed the first week of July, and this is how the anomalies are looking, and we will end with this. So yeah, this is July so far. We've obviously got week one down, 3 weeks to go. We'll see how the middle and second half of July pans out. Remember the July outlook? You can check that out at markvoganweather.com. I do have a cool first half and a warmer second half to July. Very similar idea to what was seen in the month of June. But Alaska still running slightly below average here. Good part of northern China is actually slightly below average here. Southeastern areas warmer than average. Look at India. Again, this is the rains causing the cooler than average conditions. Most of Australia is actually below average for the first week of July here. And surprisingly, it's actually central and western parts of the continent that's below average. Not so much the east, but down across New South Wales and Tasmania is running obviously very cold compared to average here. Northern portions of New Zealand is cooler than average, while the South Island is actually warmer than average. A bit of a 50-50 split. We've got the large areas of Antarctica running quite warm compared to average. We've got a few areas of cooler than average. Argentina in the far south, that Porto Alegre area of far southern Brazil, where we've had tremendous amounts of rainfall and flooding, catastrophic flooding, in fact, in the Porto Alegre city in far southern Brazil. We've went from seeing flood to freeze. Parts of that state of Rio Grande do Sul has seen some freezing conditions, probably away from the coast, away from the Porto Alegre city itself. We've seen quite the dramatic flip around taking place, but much of Brazil warmer than average. If you notice here, there's the United States. We've got let's look specifically actually at the United States here, because it's quite interesting to see. Just bear with me a second. and you've got that core of below average centered over Nebraska and South Dakota here. So this is that cool anomaly we're talking about. Then there's a kind of horseshoe, that ring of warmer than average extending from Victoria, British Columbia, right the way down through Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, across to Texas, into parts of Arkansas, Louisiana. This is all warmer than average here, and then up the East Coast as well, warmer than average. Canada's seeing a little bit of a change. We're losing some of that cool that was seen back in June across parts of the southern prairies. It's slightly warmer, still a little bit cooler than average across the far south, but the far north of these provinces are warmer than average. Let's have a look at Europe specifically, and then we'll kind of round things up. So this is the first week of July, and yeah, it's not particularly warm looking, is it? Hopefully, we'll pull out of this and we'll start to see something a little bit warmer as we progress through the course of this week. So let's have a quick look at the ECM weeklies here and show what it's taken. Let's have a quick look at the upcoming 30 days. This is quite interesting to see here. Just bear with me a little second here. So let's look first and foremost. Maybe look at it like this here because we know what's happened so far. Yeah, it's not looking overly warm according to the ECMWF weeklies. This is the period now between the 6th of July and the 5th of August. So this could actually be one of the coolest. If this was right, this would be one of the coolest summers that we've had since 2011, which is pretty amazing actually when you think about it. Let's look at the 7-day anomalies and see if it indicates anything. So this is the upcoming 7 days. So this takes us out to Saturday the 13th of July. Again, below average. Let's play through. And is it showing anything warmer than average? It's flirting with it towards the 16th through the 23rd of July, isn't it? Day 10 through 17. So we'll wait and see what happens. So anyway, I think we've waffled on long enough. There's 33 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Have you hit that like button? I would greatly appreciate a like before you leave today's chat. So let me just see if there's anybody I've missed here. So Steffi Adcock's tuned in. Antarctica SSWs are extremely rare, which is, yep, that's correct. So that would be a very interesting thing to follow. Antarctic SSWs are pretty rare things. They're a lot rarer than northern southern stratospheric warmings for sure, because we had about 3 SSWs during last winter. Didn't really do an awful lot in terms of cold. It's sod's low, isn't it? So we have a kind of relatively warm winter. The funny thing about last winter was actually up until around the 20th of January, we were actually at slightly below average, but then we had such a warm February, it kind of made the whole December through February period warmer than average. But actually we had the relative cool in December. We had a notable cold spell, especially in the middle portion of January. Then it turned very, very warm during the February period. And then it kind of just, I think our memory then sticks to that warm February in terms of the entire winter overall. But it's going to be interesting to see how this second half of summer, we're approaching the middle portion of meteorological summer. That's really hard to believe, actually. And we're at the moment firmly below average. Now, in order for us to have a warmer than average summer, you really would have to get a pretty warm second half to July, which is possible, and also a warm August. And one of the comments was, "Are we going to see the influence of hurricanes going forward?" That I would expect with an above average hurricane season expected, especially once we get into the month of August. Then we need to watch these tracks, this movement of warmth within the systems themselves as the may turn north over the Atlantic. That can do one of two things. It can boost high pressure. It can bring even a heat wave to the UK and Ireland if you have a system pulling around the Bermuda High and north up into the North Atlantic. That can have one of two things. It can boost high pressure and temperature, but also it can deepen troughs, especially if they recurve up the western side of the North Atlantic. That can boost high pressure over the central North Atlantic and deepen a trough over our part of the world as well. So it depends on how that heat is redistributed away from the equator towards the pole here. But we'll watch this space as we go forward. But nonetheless, interesting things going on. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live stream. I know there's people like Richard and others watching the Grand Prix. I'll let you get back to that and enjoy the rest of that. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will hopefully be back around the same time next Sunday for more weather waffle. So thanks for checking out Gavin, Richard, LGX2, Katrine. We have got LGX2 has just gifted £10. Thank you very, very much. That is very, very generous of you for doing that. And I hope you enjoyed the content today. A very, very big thank you to LGX2 for that very, very kind donation. That is very, very good of you to do that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll be back again tomorrow with the upcoming week's content of the European outlooks. We'll be tuning in search of some sort of warmth. So check that out. Always updated around between 5 and 5:30 p.m. in the evening. So thank you very much for tuning in, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so as well. Bye for now.